Dear Amazing You,
Every individual wants to experience love, care, meaning, and purpose in life through supportive and nurturing relationships.
Our calling is to change stories and transform lives.
We are no more than ordinary people who aspire to do no less than extraordinary things.
At the heart of it all, we are connected with one another.
Everyone is community and community is everyone.
Everyone has a voice, and every voice should be heard.
With compassion, empathy, and enthusiasm, we will journey with you to make sense of life's experience.
Together, we make the present a hopeful place.
Love, joy, and peace. LCCS.
Hello and welcome to REALink, which promotes real conversations about pertinent concerns. REALink is the virtual conversation series that we've been running where we'll be engaging our special guests and you, of course, and together we will explore various topics that matter in our society. The theme for this year, 2021, Rebuilding the Community, where we seek to reconnect with communities that have been adversely affected by societal issues, exploring what has and can be done to break the cycle of hurt. Now, REALink is also a campaign to raise funds to support the work that is being done by the Lutheran Community Care Services, otherwise simply known as LCCS. And as a non-profit social service agency, LCCS has been actively engaging and empowering individuals and families to build and sustain relationships. Now, focusing on restorative practices, LCCS has served and continues to serve families, schools, institutes, residential homes, and various organizations to restore relationships that have been harmed and, of course, connecting communities together. LCCS is also a full member of the National Council of Social Service and has been accorded Institution of Public Character status. I'm Augustine Athwan, and it's my pleasure to be your host and moderator for today's REALink conversation. And it's also an online fundraising campaign alongside the speakers who will be sharing with us today. And with us today, Ken Jin and Tan En, and they'll be here as part of this 1-hour panel discussion. And this is the 10th session in our series, that's right. We started off in June, and this is number 10, and today's session is titled Re-engaging Volunteerism During COVID-19. You see, every fortnight on a Friday like this, we've been featuring both local and international speakers who get to share their perspectives on different topics, and this series, which kicked off in June, will wrap up in November. And here at LCCS, we are creating a safe and meaningful space for our speakers, Ken Jin and Tan En, to speak about what matters to them and to speak passionately, of course, which is why at this point we'd like to just gently remind you that you are also an important part of the process. Do stay connected with us on LCCS. Stay connected with one another because you've got these opportunities to raise questions and chat and bring up your concerns. And so write your comments into the chat box and put in your questions, and the production team will get that to us. We'd also like to seek your kind-hearted donation because the QR code will be appearing on your screen right now, as well as in the comment section, and you'll be glad to know that your donation will be eligible for a 1-for-1 matching, as REALink is part of the Tote Board Enhanced fundraising program, and all donations above $10 will be eligible for a 250% tax deduction. And having said that, to kick off our number 10 session, Re-engaging Volunteerism During COVID-19 in our REALink series, once again a warm welcome to Ken Jin and Tan En. I want to start by inviting both gentlemen to just lay it out for us. So gentlemen, what's your key message that you want to leave with all of us in our online community? And of course, a gentle reminder, this entire program is going to be placed on our social media platforms, and so people will watch it again. You want to kick it off?
Yes. Sure. Hi everybody. My name is Tan En. I'm the General Manager for Ray of Hope. I think the two key messages I want to leave behind really is that we can make a difference. My job at Ray of Hope is to enable the community to come together. And at the start of the crisis during COVID, we saw a lot of people coming together to do good. Whether it's volunteers coming to serve the migrant workers in the dormitories, starting a fundraiser to buy coffee for healthcare workers who are busy in the hospitals. So really, you can make a difference. And the second message is inequality. I think we've all heard stories of how COVID-19 has widened inequality in Singapore. Students in rental housing don't have laptops for their home-based learning, so stuff like that happens. But again, the good thing is people are coming up with solutions to support families like this, whether it's giving laptops or supplying supplies to these students. Yeah.
Thank you, Tan En.
Yeah, sure. So hi, I'm Ken Jin. I actually would say, I know this is going to sound interesting, but to grow a thick skin. Start with the end in mind, what you perceive, what you envision your ideal community to be, And then just do it. Just go out there and do it. Don't wait for someone else to start something, to kickstart something. If you have the gumption, if you have the motivation, then just go out there, see if someone else is already doing it, and then see whether you can join them. But if there isn't, don't be afraid to kickstart it. Don't ask the government to do it. Don't look for another organization to do it. And don't be afraid. So my movement, what we do is we encourage people to go out and pick litter. Well, enjoy the sights and sounds of Singapore, and then along the way just pick litter. And my friend commented, oh, but what if someone sees me? And I said, well, if you're doing something wrong, then yes, you don't want someone to see you. But if you are doing something right, then you should grow a thick skin and make sure they see you, right? So yeah, grow a thick skin.
So this is the kind of stuff where you do want someone to film you.
Precisely.
And the video goes viral.
Yeah,
and it's like
let it go
good.
viral, right?
Yeah. Okay. And also, Tanan, what you mentioned is also very much in line with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, where you are addressing inequality. I like that topic, and we'll come back to that. But from the literature that I had to read and reports that I had to go through, I just wanted both of you to weigh in on this. Volunteerism, is it good if it starts at a very young age? I mean, even with children? Again, anybody, feel free to jump in.
So yes, I definitely think it would be great if it can start with children. Let me just share some anecdotal evidence because, once again, we organize some litter picking along the way, and we've definitely had families bring their kids along, right? We say that as long as you can manage them, go ahead, why not, right? And after the activity, the parents' feedback that they've never seen their kids so excited. They never thought that their kids would be excited about litter picking because maybe they themselves didn't think that much about picking litter. But the kids were very active about it, and even after the activity, they went out and did their own. So I think not only should it start from young, it should start from the home. It's great if parents role model it. It's great if their significant adults in their lives role model that. It helps a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, it's what Ken Jin says is really right. It starts at home. I think we, students who, when I was younger, we had CIP hours. We had to.
CIP stands for
Community Involvement Project. I think, so we had to collect newspaper from neighborhoods. Of course, it started off being like, oh, we have to do this. But being out of our own social circle, being out of our own cycle, it is important, right? Going to a rental block, going to see actually how the environment is. It broke at least for me out of my own comfort zone. Yeah, well, so that it is important.
I myself also remember we had to help out, pack food. And on weekends, at least at the church I was helping out, you would see suddenly groups of people coming out of the housing estate, and then you suddenly realize there are poor living amongst us who don't even have access to a certain amount of money to buy food and the basic necessities. And so that was not evident, right? I mean, children and young people wouldn't be wandering around the neighborhood seeing these things. So like you said, significant adults as in parents and also teachers in schools are very influential and very important in trying to open up young people's eyes. I brought it up because the literature says if you get them started from young, it hopefully stays with them. And of course, the other major area in terms of age are working adults. But what if I flip it? Working adults, the standard answer of most young people when they go into the workforce is, I don't have time.
No time.
You want to pick up on that?
So, I mean, time is what you make of it, right? I mean, end of the day, if you are passionate about something, like what Ken Jin has done with his project, is you see something wrong in the world, you want to make it right. You can do something about it. Again, I go back to COVID, right? I have people coming to me and say, Tanan, I want to start a fundraiser. I want to buy and fundraise for care packages for the cleaners in my neighborhood. Right. See, that's great, right? So they come to my platform, they fundraise, and then they go around distributing care packages. And these are working adults, and they bring their kids along. And you can make a difference. You don't have to wait for the government to do something about it.
Yeah, correct.
I just want to go a little bit deeper. So does it work? Because although COVID has thrown several challenges, but also at the same time, everybody's going online to raise awareness and to do a lot of things. Does it somehow or other get lost? How do you create awareness and get people to come for your cause, for example?
Most of what we do really is in terms of trends. Because last year the migrant worker crisis was very real.
Very real.
And
yes.
We actually
it still is.
And it still is. I mean, just look at what happened recently at the dormitories.
Yes.
The workers had to gather together to make their voice heard that their conditions were bad, and then the riot police had to be activated. I don't know how that works. So really, going back to volunteerism, the idea really is that you can make a difference. You can do something together, and as long as you believe in it, you can make yourself heard, and you can make your cause
and address
public.
the inequality that you are witnessing and seeing.
And I think organizations themselves, so for example, you mentioned about them being employees, right? So employers also have the responsibility to allow employees to contribute back to society, right? Right. I think the government has a scheme that allows public servants 2 days of volunteerism leave. And in the same way, I think organizations, companies can also do that. Or just dedicate your time to a particular project.
Could you just repeat that? Because I don't think everybody knows about the 2 days.
If I'm not wrong, I could be wrong, but if I'm not wrong, public servants can request to take some time for volunteerism.
So it's like childcare leave, or all those other things that are sort of like recognized, so to speak.
I believe so. Yeah.
All right. So that's good to hear. And so one of the things about the REALink Conversation series is, I mean, I myself am also learning every fortnight from these conversations. So do your research, but at the same time also please do post your questions and your comments to us, and we will definitely bring this up in the conversation. I'm going to move this along. Time really goes by quickly. Another area that I wanted to get both of you to weigh in, which I picked up in my research, formal versus informal volunteering. Again, your thoughts.
Actually, I was just wondering whether for the viewers, and also just to make sure that we are on the right page, could you help us define what you mean by formal versus informal?
Well, in school, we all did it. We didn't really have much of a choice.
Sure.
We all had to get involved in something or other, and even in other countries, it looks good on your resume, on your CV that you contributed to society. But in some organizations, like that 2 days in a year or more, it's actually sort of a requirement in some organizations to set aside time. And I'm talking beyond CSR. It's beyond the corporate social responsibility, where it's more or less the right thing to do. It has come up in our previous REALink conversations as well. So that's formal. Informal is that there's a sudden need in society, and then the awareness was created. Sometimes media reports, sometimes like you put something out on social media, it goes viral, and then everybody just comes in, but they don't stay. And once that project has been completed, they sort of like just drift away. So I mean, I may be wrong with my definitions, but those are the two broad ideas that I want to bring out.
Yeah, I think for formal volunteering, I mean, at Real Hope, we work with corporates to help them on their giving journey. So I had two different big organizations, I mean, I won't name names, volunteer with us. And it was very clear that not everybody wanted to be there. But at the end of the volunteering, you could see actually, I know more about the issue. I've seen how a rental block looks like. I've seen how the beneficiaries actually do need my help. And I think for us, being able to inspire just a few of them to do more, and then maybe branch out into the informal volunteering, because people start their own volunteer groups, and there are a lot of this kind of volunteer groups online, Facebook groups you can join. You can give people items, you can volunteer. So I think it starts off with the formal stuff, like in school, in corporates, and then eventually you inspire people to do more beyond the formal.
I'm just going to throw in my own view. I think you're very much spot on. The informal is that they finish that project and they just go back into whatever they've been doing. But hopefully they get inspired. And of course, the ideal thing is if they really get passionate about something, they go and start on their own, and then they drive it, right? So does it help?
Yeah, I think like what you mentioned, both arise from a state of need, right? Whether it's formal or informal, there's a gap, and one of the solutions was volunteerism. So I don't think we should diss it one way or another. If anything, just to add a little bit more to that, coming from a training and development background, I would say that make sure there's proper facilitation of learning. So once you have volunteered, help people unpack that experience. What stood out to you? Why did it stand out for you? And then what does it say about yourself? What does it say about the way you interact with people? And help them understand where they are on the scale of volunteerism. Because you mentioned formal, informal, but it's actually a whole spectrum, right? There's so many various ways to define volunteerism within that whole, within those two boundaries. So I would say as long as you are able to contribute in a meaningful way, go ahead and do it. Grow that thick skin.
Yeah, that's a great point. So I go back to the example of these two corporates who volunteered with me. There was one volunteer who came to me and asked me, "What, that lady, are you sure she's a beneficiary? She has an iPhone, she wears a nice watch." But I'm like, but she came out from work. So we dispensing this kind of myths about the working poor. Like there's this learning, like now she understands, not poor people don't dress in a certain way, right? So that really helps. I really appreciate the point.
And it's a necessity. So having that phone is part and parcel.
Yes, it's part of her work.
They
right?
would have
she has to present herself in a certain way,
they
right?
They would have worked very hard to achieve and get those necessities. Actually, it's a nice segue to the next thing that I'm going to bring up, and that's about commitment. Again, from the literature that I've gone through, some people, I mean, both of you are obviously passionate about your cause, but some people say, well, these volunteers, they don't stay the cause, they come and then they drift away. Is there a need to have some sort of commitment? I mean, like maybe 3 months or 6 months? So do you have a position on that, both of you?
Yeah, I would share. There's a great organization, I'll plug them here, HelpServe. They are a charity that helps migrant workers. A big part of their manpower actually is volunteers, because they run clinics around Singapore.
Okay.
So they obviously can't afford to hire so many doctors, right? So they actually have a pool of volunteer doctors who I believe every Wednesday night or Tuesday night, I can't remember the date, they actually volunteer their time to see migrant workers. And
this is done pro bono.
Pro bono. So HelpServe has a very core group of volunteers who does that for them. And that is their core program. It's not like by the way they are doing this. Right. Without these volunteers, they can't work.
So that's exactly what I meant about commitment, because once word goes out, others will come searching for this medical service or whatever it is that you're providing.
And you need a dedicated volunteer team, volunteer manager to sustain, to engage the volunteers, to make sure they have a meaningful experience when they're volunteering, in this case at HelpServe. Right. And COVID hit them pretty hard because the doctors can't volunteer.
All right.
So they had to pivot their model, either telemedicine. Yeah. So having a formal program helps sustain engagement.
Right. Ken Jin?
Maybe I'll look at it from another way. I think whether or not you have sustained or ad hoc volunteerism, even if they can't stay the cause, they can at least be advocates for your cause, right? And like what Tanan said, as long as they have that meaningful experience with you and they're able to help you share your message, they can still continue to be a volunteer by being a voice for your organization or your cause. So I'd say, at the end of the day, it's about the quality of experience. Yeah.
So we shouldn't discriminate, so to speak. If someone comes and stays on board for a few months and says, I can't make the commitment, they can still be a voice out there
Certainly,
to support and draw others towards the cause of the project.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, there are going to be certain types of voluntary work that require a certain level of commitment. So for example, if you're working with kids, then they may need a certain amount of time to build that trust with the kid, right? And to ensure that, it's not just very transient adults coming in and out. That might be harmful to their relationship building. But beyond such key concerns, I think we should try and grow that whole spectrum of volunteerism. I think it's important to note that being a volunteer is not a label that I wear all the time. We all have varying and sometimes competing priorities. It doesn't mean that just because I volunteer once, I have to be a volunteer all my life and 24/7. That is not realistic, and we should go easy on ourselves in that we do what we can with the time and the effort that we have.
It's a nice segue to what I was going to bring up, because some of the common reasons
it's almost like
we have former volunteers give for stopping their volunteering range from too much responsibility, tired, burnt out, right? And lack of advancement. Some of them actually want to be able to progress in that organization or that cause or that project. And finally, feeling unappreciated. So is this what you're also seeing in the work that you all do?
It is challenging because, volunteers are not paid, right? So how do you motivate them? And I think there's a big push from the government to try to get volunteerism up. So that, because charities are always, I run a charity, right? LCCS is a charity. We're always running out of manpower. So how do we engage volunteers to expand our services?
So what do you do in your own project? How do you recognize them and encourage them?
Yeah, so there's a lot of personal relationships to make sure that the engagement is meaningful. There's a lot of unpacking of, so how was it for you? How was the experience? Even things like delivering food to a needy family during COVID. I mean, you can argue they're just drivers, but it's more than that. They're bringing somebody a meal and being able to engage with the beneficiaries. So thanking them, so we get beneficiaries to write thank you notes to the volunteers. So all of these small things, they do help. And that's how you can truly change somebody's life when it comes to
By the way,
volunteering.
just, I'll bring Ken Jin in. But these factors that I just mentioned are actually from a Singapore National Volunteer Research Report. And it was done several years ago, but it still seems to be some of the consistent reasons why people sort of like give up, or they pause, they put a pause button on their volunteer work. But we're not talking here about getting a LinkedIn badge or a LinkedIn cert, not all the time everybody wants to do it, but there are people who genuinely feel, I want to be some sort of recognition. So earlier when you talked about certain number of days that the employer or the corporate actually says, go out and do this, we support you, you're on the company payroll, and we are proud to be part of this. I mean, that helps a lot also, right?
It does. So circling back to the question, I think it really helps if voluntary organizations or charitable causes, or there is a volunteer manager or some volunteer management. So just like what Tanan was sharing, right? It's just helping people to see the meaning behind their voluntary experiences, and really ensuring that good two-way communication, sometimes even multiple ways, because it's not just the beneficiaries and the volunteers. Sometimes it's the volunteer and volunteers themselves. They may have misgivings, right, which could possibly be like not recognizing them, and it could be between volunteers themselves. So ensuring that there's good management of that, because you want to ensure that people are engaged at their strengths, their interests, and maybe even their agenda. Who knows what they're coming in with, right? So
I like the point that you mentioned about strengths, because every individual is different, right?
Certainly.
So you can't have one standard sort of thing and say, okay, all of you go here, right? So I like that point. Sorry to interrupt, but I thought maybe it's also a good segue. We have about another 10 minutes before we reach the midpoint. So all this simply means that for our viewers, it took a long time to get people to embrace technology, and then with COVID, within a short time, I hear now organizations have chief technology officer, and of course with diversity and inclusiveness, all the other areas are also coming on board. So I like your point about chief volunteer officer. Does your organization have a chief volunteer officer? Is there one in your organization, in your school, in your corporate sector? But definitely the next section I want to go, and this is one of my favorite topics, I've labeled it, the private sector is the way to go, employee volunteering. Actually, both of you brought it up. So I'm going to put you both on the spot. Is the private sector better equipped to handle volunteerism?
It's a tricky question.
Partly it's because they got the money, they got the funding. And I mean, to be fair, even small and medium enterprises rose to the occasion to change their manufacturing line, to handle food delivery, to produce certain important items and equipment, and even the mask, all to meet the greater good and the needs of the country.
Yeah, and this example, I mean, I had a fundraiser. It was a restaurant owner who wanted to pack bento boxes to send to Tan Tock Seng because he wanted to appreciate the healthcare workers, and that's how, and then his teammates, employees actually send the food over. The big companies, it's slightly challenging. We are working with a particular company now, but because of a policy, because of COVID, they cannot volunteer. So we've been trying to find ways of how we can engage our beneficiaries virtually, and that can be a challenge as well.
It is, I can imagine, because not everybody, I mean, even if it's telehealth, not everybody could be comfortable with the technology or have access to the technology and the internet. Earlier you talked about laptops and home-based learning, but it sounds easy, but not everybody has access to it and can afford the equipment or the internet connection and things like that. But I just wanted to throw it out there because, I mean, private sector has so many advantages. They have that expertise in whatever it is that they are doing, right? Or they are I mean, if you're a financial institution, I can talk financial literacy, right? Teaching people how to manage their finances carefully during this difficult time as well.
Yeah.
Okay, but I'm speaking too much. We should hear from both of you.
Yeah, on the volunteering front, I mean, you typically in a sector you have broad-based volunteering, which is the logistics, delivering, packing, and then you have the skills-based volunteering. So what you alluded to earlier is, like example, a financial institute can do financial literacy, or in this case, if you're a design company, you can provide pro bono design work for a charity, because most of us in this sector don't have the resources to be able to hire a full-time designer to do our work. So I think companies can do a lot on that front. I know some big companies actually allow, I think it's Bain, they allow employees to take time off, like half a year to like a gap year for them to go and volunteer at an organization to build capacity.
You see,
and that's amazing, right?
So once again, you raised a very interesting point, again from the literature that I was going through. Very interesting success stories in the West, I mean broadly Europe, US and other parts of the world, and there have been calls to see more of this in Asia. That's why I brought up the private sector.
Right.
Yeah.
Are our own homegrown industries and private sector also doing like what you just alluded to?
I think it takes time to reach the level of maturity. I mean, end of the day, in terms of prosperity is important. We need to make sure we make money, the country can survive. So a lot of our companies, I think, once they reach a level of maturity, they want to give back to the community, because end of the day, you need a thriving community to be your customers. You cannot be serving the community who is not engaged.
Sure. So you need to be strong.
Yeah.
So I'm going to circle back to my original point about growing a thick skin, right? I think at the end of the day, volunteerism is people-driven. It's driven by the person. And if your organization doesn't have an arm or a voice or a stand on volunteerism, then you as an individual, as a person living in a society, in a community with needs, you should organize and try and lobby for it. So yes, I think private organizations certainly have some advantages, but organizations are driven by people. And if there are enough people who have thick enough skins and who are willing to do something and drive change, then at the end of the day, it's about people.
I'm smiling because you just instigated. So I think this weekend, everybody is going to be mulling over your words. And then there's going to be a little revolution on Monday morning when they go to work. And
we
it's
all
like,
got thick
I want to volunteer.
Where's all this thing coming from? Then the boss, our company has got all these things, but we're not doing anything for society. But I hear you. I hear you. So that's the thick skin, right? So once again, some interesting suggestions are coming up from both our panelists, but we're going to push on. Yeah. You're right, time just flies by. And I do have a few more questions before we reach the midpoint. What is your greatest need? Why is it your greatest need? And how can our company help? Again, not my questions, but these are questions that I picked up when I did the research on about private sector and volunteering. How would both of you respond where there are people who are saying there's still something out there that needs to be done, but nobody is addressing that need? How do we ensure that the needs are being identified and being met? I mean, you talked about the important needs of the migrant workers, and so that's one good thing. It's visible, and there's still a lot more work to be done. But are there other areas that we may be missing? And how do we make sure we can pick up these things? How can we create an environment where people can say, please look into this? I mean, I know the job of the media is to look at this and flag it up, right? And to raise awareness. Yeah.
Right. Okay, I'll start with something simple. It's literally just be plugged in. Keep your eyes open, your ears on the ground. Be open to new ideas, to speak with people if need to, but be plugged in, and you have an opinion, and that's great, and we all should have our own opinions, but don't be closed off to other people's opinions. And if you hear enough about people saying, oh, it's really hurting my bottom line, or I can't get enough food on the table, and if enough people are saying that, then you know something needs to be done. And don't wait for someone else to do it, right? I think my project was started really because I saw that there was a lot of litter, and at first I was like, why isn't anyone doing this? Then I realized, why am I not doing it, right? And so I started doing it. And I think, we all should feel empowered to do something like that.
And I think again, we go back to the structure versus organic, right? And I think that what is so powerful of being organic is that there's no hidden agenda when you're doing something. I'll share a quick story. So I moved into my new place a couple of years ago, and typically what happens is the grassroots will organize a party to get to know each other. But you know these things how it goes. People go down, they eat, they don't really get to know each other, and then they leave. And I was so frustrated. I'm like, what's happening? Like, I still don't know my neighbors. So I decided I brought my 6-month-old son at the time to knock on doors and say, look, I'm your neighbor. Hi, I want to organize a simple food gathering. Would you like to come? And that sparked a conversation among my neighbors, my community. I mean, it's not volunteering, but for me, it's about building a community. And volunteers, they want to be part of a community. I mean, which is why these days we see a lot of Telegram groups where people come together and they share things. They say, oh, you need a sofa. I actually have an old sofa. Or you have a neighbor who needs help. And these things, they come together organically.
You know, listening to you, this was actually done some years ago, and it was managed online by a huge company. I'm not going to mention the name again, but you know, they basically have the skills. They're a huge IT company, and so they created this website. They managed the whole back-end stuff of it. So people will put down a need that they saw. So I'm also circling back to the question I raised. So if you're an employee and you go back based on your suggestion on Monday and say, boss, there's this need, nobody's addressing it, can we do something about it? Good. And if someone can put that, so like you said, I just feel that there's a lot of stuff out there, but maybe people are not picking up on it, you know, and it can't be done by one individual. It definitely needs more people. But if you were alone and you just put stuff out on the internet, would it work? I mean, is that how both of you started? You just went solo and then it grew organically, so to speak?
Yeah, I think you can share more about your project.
Yeah,
which is really very interesting.
actually, pretty much that was what I did. I was. You're right. I mean, I started picking up litter along the way, and it was great training for me because I was running for a marathon, so it was excellent. But then I realized I couldn't do it alone. Like you rightly said. So it so happened that previously I had been volunteering with the National Youth Council, and so I had a group of friends, and I just messaged them one day. It's like, hey guys, I'm planning to do this. Would anyone be interested? And so it started with friends, and then they got me started on Facebook. I sent to start up a Facebook group, and then it grew from there. And thankfully, I quite fortuitously bumped into a photographer for the Straits Times, if I'm not wrong, and so then it just kind of grew from there. But
all right, so friends, the power of social media, someone from mainstream media picking it up. So
organically, like it grew, right?
All the stars are in alignment, and it starts. Right?
Yes, and knowing people who helped share the message.
Okay, it's nice to hear, and I hope we are giving you ideas as well. So it's, you know, basically you have to be strong and not to give up. But already 2 questions have come in, so I'm going to throw it both at Ken Jin and Tannen. Do you think COVID-19 has caused a drop in volunteerism? And if there is a drop, what can we do? It's sort of a 2-part question.
I think the first one, a drop in volunteerism. I think drop in structured volunteerism of either the schools, they can't do it.
Both in Singapore and going to the neighboring countries in the region to volunteer. I know a lot of people couldn't do that because of travel restrictions.
Yeah.
But the good news is we are starting to slowly open the borders, cautiously, so that should start as well.
Yeah. But so what I'm seeing on the ground is that while the structured volunteering is not as what's the word I want to use? Not as prolific because there are policies in place. The informal stuff is still happening. Because a lot of informal stuff, because when you're at war, you want to fight the war. So when people see, you know, their cleaners being tired all the time, or they see healthcare workers being tired, they want to send food to the hospital, they want to help migrant workers, they want to send things to the dormitories. So I think it's a shift to the growing organically. So I mean, I don't have the stats of it dropping significantly, but I think it's just different types of volunteerism has come up. And people stepping up to do more in time of need.
No, yeah, I fully agree. So I think one thing we should remember is that every time there's a change, it's a change in behavior, and people have to take a step back to think about what it means for them, right? And what more a very big change such as COVID-19. So I don't think we should beat ourselves silly just because there was a drop in volunteerism. It meant that we had to take a step back to reevaluate where we were needed the most. And Tannen was right. We rededicated ourselves in other areas, whether it was donating food for the migrant workers or helping them ensure that they had better living conditions. and just going out and really helping people. I think people were just being neighborly. I think that is a form of volunteerism, if you will.
Exactly.
Just going and knocking on doors and saying hi.
Like what you said, going out and seeing the person and keeping your mask on and following whatever the guidelines are. No one is saying don't do that, but we need to make that effort to just go out and see what the environment is, even in our neighborhood and our block. So we didn't give you an exact answer. There's no empirical evidence that we have brought with us today in today's discussion. But I would echo what both gentlemen have said. When there's a challenge, you need to take a step back and reevaluate and look at alternative strategies, all right? So let's push on. And for those of you who have just joined in, I just want to do a quick recap. Of course, you're watching LCCS's REALink 2021 Virtual Conversation Series, where we put the spotlight on a range of topics that matter in our society. The theme for this year is rebuilding the community, and I'm Augustine Antoine. Of course, we have both our friends here, Ken Jin and Tannen, who are sharing with us their personal experiences and their journey on re-engaging volunteerism precisely during this COVID-19 period. REALink is, of course, an LCCS fundraising campaign. So once again, we'd like to seek your support. Do give a donation. The QR code is on your screen, at the bottom of your screen, and it will also be on your comments section as well. And you'll be glad to know that your donation will be eligible for a one-for-one matching, as REALink is a part of the Tote Board Enhanced Fundraising Program. And every donation above $10, you're eligible for a 250% tax deduction that will go towards supporting LCCS in engaging and empowering individuals and families to build and restore relationships. So, Ken Jin and Tannen, building on what both of you have just shared, and in the remaining minutes that we have, one of the things that I also found because of COVID-19 and the earlier question that came from our viewer, that there needs to also be a relook in terms of leadership, both leadership in public sector, private sector, and even among NGOs and foundations. And so words like stewardship rather than leadership and servant leadership, all these things have been tossed out. They're not new, they've been around for a long time, but COVID has sort of really brought it right into our face, into our families, into our homes. Do you feel that after all this, there's no turning back? Because I have a worry that once things get better, we tend to forget the very issues. I'm just pushing your buttons here. The very issues that you all brought up. Once things get better, it sort of just starts to fade into the background. No one cares about the litter. No one starts thinking about the workers because everybody's thinking about something else. And it drifts away.
Yeah. I think when it comes to social change, the cliche is that it takes 2 generations for social change. With the migrant workers, I firmly believe that we have reached a tipping point, and now there's also a bit of guilt, I think, from Singaporeans. My 2 biggest fundraisers at Ray of Hope was actually migrant worker related. People now know about those issues. I don't think there's any turning back. We know how bad the conditions were, and we are demanding change from the government. And again, recently looking how they're building new dorms, new standards. Now they're looking for a tender to provide regional health care for migrant workers. That would not have happened without COVID. So I mean, there is a silver lining, and I think it takes time for people to change, and I don't think we're turning back on social issues in this case for the migrant workers.
Thank you for that.
Maybe I'll come at it from another angle. If there are actually a number of charitable organizations or VWOs out there that have similar, if not, they may not be exactly the same, but they have similar avenues, similar values. And if we feel that there is a shift in the overall direction that the population is going in, but the need still exists, then I think it's important that we reach out to one another, connect, and let's reorganize ourselves for the betterment of the cause. And so there is no, for me, I'm very willing to share what Waterways Watch of Society is doing, what cleanup.
Waterways is the group that goes out in their boats.
Exactly, correct.
Yes.
So WWF, there's a group that does a cleanup of beaches. I willingly share what they're doing because what they're doing is in line with our general push for creating a better environment for everyone, both physically as well as mentally and emotionally. So I think there's nothing wrong, and as long as we find such commonalities to refocus and recenter, and just have that thick skin.
Yeah. You know, both of you have raised very important points. The workers, the environment, as in the litter, and if we don't do anything about the litter, for example, it's going to end up into the waterways, into the rivers, and into the ocean, and you've seen all the stories about plastic, and it gets into our food systems, and it comes back into us, and it hurts us. So we can't stop. I mean, that's the bottom line is we need to keep pushing on.
Yeah.
And you brought up the point about the workers, and there's no turning back. There are a lot of things that need to change, right, in terms of healthcare, living conditions, and what we are hoping for, of course, it cannot always be state-driven. I mean, laws need to change, we agree, but it also needs to be people-orientated, which is the other thing I wrote here, people driving the movement. So change agents, we can be the change agents, right? Does it always have to be the state that drives it?
No, definitely not.
No.
I think the dynamics between the government and civil society has always been a kind of a tricky balance. Typically in countries with strong governments have usually weaker civil society because government does everything for them. Like in Singapore, for example, right? In a country like Hong Kong, for example, when the government is not so strong, you have very big civil societies, and that includes triads and communities. In the Singapore context, we have charities to fill the gaps, right? So
you mentioned triads,
yeah.
I immediately triggered some movies that I remember. But anyway, side issue, staying on point.
Yeah, so I think increasingly, I really believe that Singaporeans are speaking up more. They're willing to put their life on the line to speak up for issues. And that can be challenging. And we talk about people driving movement. I go back to the migrant workers because I'm fairly passionate about that. Out of this COVID crisis, you had people like Deepa from It's Raining Raincoats, who started her organization way before COVID, but has really grown. Her volunteer pool has grown significantly. She has done a lot for migrant workers. People like Tsai Ing-zhou, who started a coalition for migrant workers. They speak up and they drive the movements, and now people know about these issues. I think, again, that wave will only go bigger. Climate change is a very classic example, right? We talk about climate anxiety for the young generation. I think students who are anxious about climate, they want to do more, and they will. And I think the government has to recognize that dynamic shift.
So I just wanted to add on. So Deepa Swaminathan's It's Raining Raincoats was one of our earlier sessions on LCCS.
Yes.
You can look it up on the LCCS social media platforms, and you can get up to speed. We had a full 1-hour panel discussion on that with Deepa as well. Yeah, so building on what you just shared, Ken Jin, do you feel, I know you're passionate, and you said you just had that thick skin and push for it, but are you at any time worried that, sometimes all this attention is there and fundraising, money becomes central, and when the fundraising or the financial side drops, the cause suffers?
So,
basically, to just put it all out there. Money matters, and right now there's a lot of attention because people are paying attention to it.
Right.
I'm just worried that if they turn their direction somewhere else, the funding drops, and that's going to affect the cause.
Well, so I can't speak for other organizations or movements, but I will say for my movement, money is definitely not central. At the start, we did have some seed funding only to help get our message out, but that's because there was a competition and we entered ourselves for the competition and got some money, so that was a nice little cherry on the top. But beyond that, there's no need for money. We do it out of our own free will and our own free time. We have been thankful in getting a glove maker to share some gloves with us. They were helpful. I mean, they had spare gloves
glove
anyway.
maker so that when you
pick up litter,
you can be safe and
exactly correct.
That's nice
beyond
to know.
So it was nice of them. But beyond that, no money involved. But that's not to say money is not important to other organizations, right? I reckon that it is. Because I don't involve myself with money, I can't speak. I don't know whether...
I just wanted to bring it out there because there are concerns that COVID put a lot of emphasis and a lot of awareness created on mainstream media and on social media, of course, and people driving it. I mean, that's no denying that. But genuine worry that it changes course, like many initiatives, or not enough leadership. Or the next question I was going to ask is training. There's not enough proper training to help people, and that's why you end up having burnouts or lack of appreciation. So I wanted to put this in because we are in the closing stages of our discussion. Money, training, thoughts on that?
I mean, the charity sector is fairly small. I mean, we are all trying to plug gaps here. Volunteer groups, typically what happens is you start a movement, you start something, and you want to do more. You get volunteers to come in. There will come a point in time where you have to decide, do I do this full time? Do I believe it strongly that I want to quit my full-time job to do this? And that is where the push comes to shove, and it is challenging. Because people like to give money for donations in kind. They give money to help the beneficiary, but it's hard to fundraise for your own salary, for example. So I know a few grown-up groups who are at this predicament. They have done great work during COVID. Now they're grappling, should I do more? Can I scale? But does that mean...
I think there's someone out there who's actually thinking about that right now, listening to you.
Yeah.
That's why I brought it up, because I think there's some people who are so touched by the issues, and even the ones that both of you have raised, they're just another tipping point. Do I want to give everything up and go into this full time? So that's why I brought this up. And to grow the organization, right? I mean, if they really believe in this, and I believe many people do, what's the next step, It's scary, right? I mean,
it is. And again, we talk about maturity level in the charity sector. Singapore is a bit less developed in that sense, so there's not that much funding to help volunteer groups to become full-fledged charities, because there's a governance cost. You need to pay for auditor, you need to pay for corporate secretary. There's actually real money in it too. So there are a few organizations that I'm working with. They are thinking about this. What do they do? How can they grow? How can they do more? You don't need money to do a lot of good things, but eventually, if you do want to dedicate your life to it, then that is where you have to decide how you want to make it work.
Sounds like a marriage of a startup / social enterprise / you want to make a difference in society.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I was going to say that we see it as a challenge, and yes, of course, it is a challenge. But in every challenge, there lies the avenue for opportunities, right? I think is often it's this adage. The Chinese have this 危机, right? 危机 is danger, but at the same time, there is an opportunity when you translate it. So I think even other organizations, whenever they hit roadblocks, they take the time to reorganize, recollect themselves, and see, okay, how do we reposition ourselves to move forward? And we should challenge ourselves to see it in that light. How do we reorganize our movement to take full advantage of Zoom came up overnight, right? Like out of nowhere, it became so popular. And people were starting to think about how do we facilitate using Zoom? How do we share events over Zoom? So let's see it as an opportunity, right? And in the same way, there'll be many other opportunities opening up. So let's be flexible.
Well, with the few minutes that we have and the home stretch, I thought we should devote our final few minutes to what's the next step. I mean, like you said, there are things that you do, Ken Jin, that you feel that we don't need funding because you do it because you're passionate about it and you feel that I can make a difference on my own, and I just do this as often or as frequently as possible. Then there are groups like the Waterways group that go out there and spend time out there under the weather and trying to make a difference as well. Then there's your side of the sharing, where you said you want to make a difference by raising funds, and you have decided to adopt a particular section of society, an important group of people, and you want to make a difference. So it's coming back to what I raised earlier before the midpoint about private sector and identifying needs. How do we ensure those other areas that are out there also get heard? I mean, could they actually send suggestions to both of you or perhaps to LCCS and say, this is an area that needs attention, no one seems to be paying attention to it. I mean, since you all said we shouldn't always be depending on the state, right? And we should try to do things on our own as well.
I think the
Are you,
board.
I mean, in other words, are you both open to new areas, or you feel no, I've got enough to handle as it is on my own?
Yeah. One of the challenges in the sector is that we become quite silo-minded because we work on our own challenges. So it's hard to be collaborative because sometimes you're fighting your own war, right? And that can be challenging. But again, the borrower, what Ken Jin said, if you grow a thick enough skin, you can do something yourself. You don't need to approach us, you can do it. So one thing, when young people come to me and say, oh, what can I do? I say, if there is one thing you could change in Singapore, you snap your finger and that happens, what would it be? Most people have an answer, yeah, actually it's poverty, it's the environment. Then start there. You can start something yourself, you can join an organization, you can volunteer, you can do something and then be inspired. And then once you start doing something, you inspire others, like what Ken Jin has done, right? Yeah. He started one man running, picking up litter, and then started with his friends. People started doing more. Yeah. So there's no need to come to us, you can do something yourself.
All right, so we hope our sharing is also giving you ideas and inspiring you to also look at that need. I mean, I just basically wanted to say as the moderator, I still believe there are unidentified areas that are out there, right? Even in a small island nation like Singapore, and we need everybody on board. It's all hands on deck, literally, right? Regardless even of age. Ken Jin, add on?
Okay, so I'm going to come at it at a tangent. Here's my philosophy on the concept of home, okay? I think whenever people think about home, we always think about, oh, it's a place where I feel comfortable, where I can come back and really chill and relax. My thinking of it is, yes, home is all that and more, actually, because I choose to believe that home is a place where if I am missing, then something feels off. Home is not complete. I know it sounds egocentric, it sounds very egoistic, but that's not the point. The point is, I have done something, I have contributed such that I can really call this place my home, and it is a place that I deserve to be in. And I say that because I think everyone has a part to play. I mean, you mentioned poverty just now, right? Don't see the poor as being incompetent. They're not. We need to give them opportunities to give back as well and see this as their home. So create solutions with the stakeholders in mind and the stakeholders involved. And I think that will be a great way to push for sustainable change in whichever problem that you have. Yeah.
Well, it's great. I mean, going on that is a community, right? Being part of a community, it can be just being friends with your neighbor, being part of a virtual community where you're helping people in a different neighborhood. Really, that sense of belonging, I think it's important. Well, no, it is very important, and I think we have lost some of that as Singapore became a more developed country. And I think COVID has definitely heightened inequalities. It has brought up some issues that we've never seen before, some needs, discriminated migrant workers, children who don't have laptops. Mental health, which is fantastic. The way now we can openly talk about mental health. Yeah. And I think, there's a lot of leadership coming from, in this case, the president, who openly shared about mental health. So all of these things are important, and you can do something about it. I think that's the message that both of us are trying to say. You can do something.
I just wanted to, traditionally we do this at the end, but I thought I'll just press the pause button for just a little while, because our discussion is drawing to a close. To show our appreciation to both Ken Jin and Tanan, it's actually right here in front of me. I'm going to just hold this up. You can't really see it, but this is called Fables Talk. It's an LCCS project, and it actually encompasses quite a number of things that we've been discussing since June when we launched this conversation series. They have the insights and the experience on these cards, and LCCS will be gifting these deck of cards called Fable Talks to both of you. So gentlemen, please do look out for it. In this deck of cards, you will find stories that exemplify LCCS's working principles, such as respecting individuals' voice, space, and relational inclusion, and at the back of it also some critical thinking questions that you can use with the card. So they'll be launching this ebook this year, so it'll come to you as a small token of appreciation.
Thank you so
right?
much.
Yeah.
That's helpful.
So look out for that.
Sure.
But finally, into our home stretch, as always, we wish we had more time. But when I had the privilege to meet both gentlemen prior to this discussion, I will say this, that no matter what question I throw at them, I think they're back to their core mission. They're not going to deviate. But at the same time, I think one of the last points that came up is, you could be in any profession. Maybe it's also just part of volunteering is just to put whatever it is you're doing in your day job on the whole, and just join Ken Jin and take up litter and just, no money involved. It's just your time, and pretty good exercise, I should say, listening from what you're sharing. Or join Tannen. Obviously, you've heard from his area of volunteerism, and they're passionate, and they've chosen a particular area that they want to divert their time and their attention to. So really, it's up to you. That you have a choice, and you can also start your own initiative. So gentlemen, full circle, we're back to the home stretch. We began with your core messages that you shared. I did try to throw a few curveballs at both of you and try to get your position, but listening to both of you, you've addressed all the key concerns that I've raised. In the home stretch, any parting thoughts for our viewers out there and people who are going to find this recording weeks after today? Anything you want to leave with them?
I mean, I have a lot that I want to share, but I won't.
But please, give us the bullet point version, and then we'll invite you back for another round of discussions.
I mean, so number one, grow a thick skin. Number two, have a leadership and succession plan in place if you do want to start something on your own. I think that's the difficult thing that I had to learn along the way. I wanted to be as faceless as possible because I wanted this to be a ground-up movement. But I found that leadership is important, that people do need some form of identification. So be ready to take up that mantle if you really are passionate about it. But beyond that, I think really Singapore needs us to create a home. So make sure that this is your home. Yeah,
that's a nice one.
Yeah.
So actually someone might even be inspired listening to you, Ken Jin, and they might start something in another city or in another country, anywhere else in Southeast Asia or Asia and beyond. Who knows?
Yeah.
Tannen?
Now I feel like singing home.
Yeah, truly.
Okay. Going on what Ken Jin has said, it's you can do something about it. If you wake up one day and you realize, the world is not in a great place, there are things you can do. There are needs that can be met. You can start a fundraiser, you can join your friends, you can spread awareness about your challenges. Really, there really is a lot you can do, and there's nothing stopping you. You don't need to wait for government to do something, you don't need to wait for somebody else to do something. That really is my parting message. And once you find something that you enjoy doing and you want to push forward, just do it. Yeah.
So we've raised quite a number of points, ideas. And if there's anything that you heard in our conversation today that you want to find out more, just talk to the community here at LCCS, and I'm sure someone in the team will get back to you and answer your queries. But as we gently wrap up our panel discussion today, please join me in thanking Ken Jin and Tannen for their sharing, and of course all of you, including the questions that came in earlier. Let us know what you think about our program, and you can leave your comments on our chat room as well, even now. And as a final reminder, we hope that you can also support our campaign by donating generously using the QR code that is at the bottom of your screen, and it will also be in your comments section. And we'd also like to call your attention to our next REALink virtual conversation session. It's happening on Friday, the 29th of October, same time, 7:30 p.m. Singapore time. And our guest speaker will be Lorraine Lim. And the topic, preventing the rise of domestic violence during COVID-19. So please set aside some time on Friday the 29th of October at 7:30 to join Lorraine and myself, and we'll be discussing this topic, preventing the rise of domestic violence during COVID-19. Until then, from all of us here, the LCCS team, and there's this huge production crew that you can't see. We never say goodbye. We always say stay with us as the journey continues. I'm Augustine Antoine. And once again, last words from both of you gentlemen. Anything you want to say before we go?
No. I think you did a great job. Thank you. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for it's Friday night. I know you're listening to us talk on
So
a Friday
thank
night.
you everyone for being with us on the REALink Virtual Conversation Series. Stay tuned and we'll be back in 2 weeks' time.
Bye.